Hello everyone, this is Mohammed Aljaber, and we are still going over Chapter 5 exercises of our Managerial Accounting course. In this video, we're going to be looking at Exercise 5-5A, so let's read it together. The exercise says, Everett Company makes two types of circuit boards. One is a high caliber board designed to accomplish the most demanding tasks. The other is a low caliber board designed to provide limited service at an affordable price. During its most recent accounting period, Everett incurred $540,000 of inspection costs. Everett recently established an activity-based costing system that classifies its activities into four categories and appropriate cost drivers as follows. Now, this is the work of the company's accountants. They've broken down their overheads into four activity-based pools. Let's see what's required first. The requirement says allocate the inspection cost between the two products, assuming that it is driven by A, unit level activities, B, batch level activities, C, product level activities, or D, facility level activities. Note that each allocation represents a separate alternative. In other words, the $540,000 of inspection cost will be allocated 4 times, once for each cost driver. Now, this last sentence is key here, okay? So, let's see here. First, we are going to answer this in 4 different ways. So for using the same data, we're going to assume that we're going to allocate the cost, assuming that it is driven by unit level activities. That's the first step. So let's start with that. A, let's call it unit level assumption. Now first, we need to determine the cost that we want to allocate, which is given to us here, $540,000. Okay, so let's call this the cost to be allocated. What are we going to do with that cost? We're going to determine the cost driver and divide the cost to be allocated by the cost driver. Okay. Now, what is going to be our cost driver here? We have labor hours, so we could use that as our cost driver. So we have a total of 27,000 labor hours. We could use that for our unit level assumption. What will that give us? It will give us the allocation rate. So let's run the numbers. The cost to be allocated, as we said, is $540,000 divided by 27,000 hours. Let me get my calculator. 540,000 divided by 27,000. That will give us $20 per hour. Okay. Now that we have our allocation rate, we can use it to allocate the overhead cost to each of our calibers. Remember, we have high caliber and low caliber. Okay, so we'll calculate the overhead total cost for each of these products. Let's start with the high caliber. Okay. The company have determined that high caliber consumes 6,000 hours of labor. So we could say 6,000 hours multiplied by our allocation rate, which is $20. That should give us the cost allocated to high calibers. So let's use the calculator. 20 multiplied by 6,000. That's $120,000. Okay. Next, low caliber. Now, low calibers are determined to consume 21,000 labor hours. So we'll copy that, 21,000 hours multiplied by the same allocation rate from here that we calculated earlier. So $20. Run the numbers, 21,000, that should be 42,000. Okay. 420,000, I think. So 21,000 multiplied by 20. Yeah, 420,000. Okay. This is how to do it. Now, I hope that it is clear what we've done here. All we've done is that we got the costs that we want to allocate, which was the 540,000. Determined that for a unit level assumption, we are going to use labor hours as our cost driver. So we got the total labor hours from the data here. Okay. And we divided 540,000 by 27,000. That gave us the allocation rate, which is $20 per hour. Meaning that based on the data or the inputs that we've used, we concluded that each hour of labor cost us $20 of manufacturing overhead. Okay. Then knowing that high caliber consumes or requires 6,000 hours of labor, we multiply it by the rate, we get 120,000 of an allocated rate. So this is basically a manufacturing overhead allocation of the costs, right? So the total cost of manufacturing overhead is 540,000. We can now we estimate based on our breakdown that high caliber consumes is responsible for 120,000 of that 540,000. And the same thing for low caliber. Low caliber consumes a lot more labor hours, so it only makes sense that we consider or we conclude that it is responsible for 420,000 out of the total 540,000 manufacturing overhead. So this is also a manufacturing overhead allocation. It's important that you understand that. Now let's go to the next step, B. So now batch level. So if the company assumes batch levels, that means we're going to use now this column for or as a cost driver. So we're going to do the same thing that we've done previously in part A, but this time instead of dividing by the total labor hours, this time we're going to divide by the total batch or number of batches, right? So here we're going to say $540,000 divided by the total number of batches, which is 40. Batches. Run the numbers. 540,000 divided by 40. That's 13,500. So that's 13,500 per batch. Okay, so what we're saying here, that each batch that the company produces is responsible for $13,500 of that total manufacturing overhead of $540,000. Okay, so now again we can calculate for each caliber. So high caliber, how many batches for high caliber? As you can see, each one of them is responsible for 20 batches. So that means before I even do any calculation, I know that half of this cost is gonna be allocated to high caliber and the other half is gonna go to low caliber. But let's run the numbers. We're gonna say 20 batches multiplied by 13,500. That's 270,000. And for low caliber, same thing, because it also has 20 patches multiplied by 13,500 equals, and of course, without using the calculator, it's going to be the same amount. Now both of these are allocated costs. Okay. Let me add one extra page here. And we'll do part C. Now C, we're doing product level assumption. All right, let's see what's the cost driver for product level assumption here. We have number of inspections. We're going to be using this column right here. Total number of inspections is 5, so we're going to use it in our first formula. So we'll say the cost to be allocated is 540,000. Okay, divided by 5 inspections. Run the numbers on the calculator. We get $108,000 per inspection. Meaning that each inspection will cost us 108,000 manufacturing overhead. All right, so now we can use this allocation rate that we calculated to calculate for each of the products. So high caliber, for high caliber we had 3 inspections, so that will be 3 multiplied by 108,000. That's $324,000 of allocated costs. Okay, for low caliber, it's going to be the remaining amounts, where we used or expected to use 2 inspections multiplied by 108. 2 multiplied by 108,000, that's 216,000. Also allocated. All right. And then finally, D, the fourth assumption, which is facility level assumption. Okay, again, the same amount, $540,000. This time divided by, let's see, our cost driver. Our cost driver this time is number of square feet. What is the total number of square feet? 100,000. So we're going to use that. 100,000. That will give us our allocation rate. So let's run the numbers. 540,000 divided by 100,000. That's 5.4. So $5.4 per square foot. Okay. Now we can allocate for high caliber. What was the space allocated for high caliber? 30,000. So we're gonna say 30,000, square foot multiplied by $5.4. That gives us 162,000. Okay, allocated costs. For low caliber, the total was 100,000, so I should already know 30,000 out of that is the space allocated for high caliber. The remaining 70,000 is going to be here, but let's confirm in the table. Yes, 70,000. So we're going to use that. 70,000 square feet multiplied by $5.4. Run the numbers. 70,000 multiplied by 5.4. That's 378,000. Allocated. Okay. That is it. Pretty simple, even though the answer is a little bit long, but it's just because we are running the same calculation for each classification assumption. Okay. So going back here, all we've done is that we've assumed that we're going to follow a unit level assumption. Based on unit level assumption, we used labor hours, as you can see here. So we took that cost that we want to allocate, which is 540,000, divided it by the total direct labor hours, 27,000. We determined the allocation rate from that. Then we used this allocation rate to multiply it by each product's labor hours. Okay, so 6,000 by 20 for high caliber, and then 21,000 hours multiplied by 20 for the low caliber. Okay, and then again we've done the same thing, but this time for part B with the number of batches, and so on. Okay, I hope the answer is clear, and I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you in the next one, inshallah. Take care.